You're pathetic. Just leave, my sister said, her fork still poised midair, like she hadn't just burned the last thread holding me here. Madison always did have impeccable timing, slicing into her takeout chicken with surgical indifference, as if evicting your sister over pad thai was just another Thursday chore. The fluorescent kitchen light flickered overhead, humming like it, too, was tired of pretending this family still functioned. She didn't even look at me. Neither did Valerie. Our mother sat at the head of the table, hands folded in her lap like a churchgoer, eyes fixed on the half-empty bowl of rice in front of her. She didn't flinch, didn't blink. Her silence was her endorsement, subtle as the approving nod she gave a moment earlier when Madison jabbed, "You don't even help around here." It wasn't the first time, not the first insult, not the first attempt to nudge me toward the exit. But this one? This landed. I breathed in the scent of cold sesame oil and disappointment, felt the vinyl seat dig into my thighs, and stared at the grease-stained table where I'd eaten hundreds of meals, mostly in silence. I looked around for something, anything that still made this place feel like home. There was nothing. No framed photos. No laughter. No trace of me. "Funny," I said softly. "I've been paying the mortgage for 3 years. That's a strange way to thank your landlord." Madison's lips curled into that trademark smirk, the one she wore at school recitals and PTA meetings, the one that always made her look a little too pleased with herself. She popped a bite of chicken into her mouth and chewed slowly. "We never asked you to." And there it was. I felt the room tilt, not dramatically, just enough to make everything clearer. For years, I thought the tension in this house came from misunderstanding. I see now. It was design. "You're right," I said, calm as glass. "You never asked." Valerie finally stirred. "Girls," I raised a hand. Just enough to stop her. Just enough to end it. The clink of my fork meeting porcelain was the loudest sound in the room. I stood, picked up my plate, walked it to the sink, rinsed, dried, placed it neatly in the dish rack. "Understood." That was all I said. No drama, no begging, no shouting about fairness, just one word. I didn't slam the drawer shut. I didn't throw anything. I just walked out. Not out of the house. Upstairs. I closed my bedroom door with a deliberate whisper-soft click and leaned against it. My heart should have been racing. It wasn't. That scared me more than anything. I looked around the room that used to be mine. Still technically was. Faded posters, a few books on the shelf, an old sweatshirt draped over the back of my chair. But none of it felt like mine anymore. It was a set, built for a role I no longer auditioned for. I opened the closet and reached up, sliding down the storage box I hadn't touched in years. It was labeled in neat handwriting, black ink on a weathered manila folder. Proof. Inside, printed screenshots, old emails, photos, bank records, some going back nearly a decade. I had begun collecting them out of spite, then out of instinct, then, eventually, out of habit. People assume you only keep receipts when you're planning revenge. Sometimes you collect them because you know no one will believe you without them. I sat on the bed, flipping through pages of memories that weren't mine alone. They were ours. Evidence of how this house ran on silent transactions and invisible debts. That night, I didn't pack. I didn't plan. I just read. The last thing I touched that night wasn't a suitcase. It was a folder I'd labeled years ago. Proof. My room had no decorations, no framed memories. I never forgot that it wasn't meant to feel like mine. The rain tapped steadily against the window pane, an indifferent rhythm that filled the silence. Morning light filtered through the blinds in muted slats, casting soft shadows across the bare carpet. I sat on the edge of the bed, feet flat on the floor, fingers curled around the edge of the mattress like I needed an anchor. There was no picture frame on the nightstand, no posters on the wall, no childhood mementos. Nothing ever lingered long enough in this room to deserve a nail or hook. It was a room for sleeping, for waiting, not for belonging. I moved slowly to the bottom drawer of the dresser. It stuck for a second before giving way with a groan, like even the furniture had grown tired of being ignored. Inside, neatly stacked in plastic sleeves, were the pieces of a life I had paid for, but never claimed. Utility bills in my name, lease agreements, appliance repair invoices, water heater, refrigerator, the roof after that windstorm last spring. Thousands of dollars across years, all quietly shouldered by the girl they said never contributed. The documents whispered back at me now, quiet affirmations that I hadn't imagined everything, that even if my voice was dismissed, the paper trail couldn't be. As I laid them across the bed, the air in the room shifted. I wasn't just taking inventory. I was drawing a map. And then, like it always did when I needed to feel grounded in my anger, the memory surfaced. Sophomore year, regional writing contest. I had come home clutching the award certificate, still warm from the printer. Valerie barely glanced up from her crossword. Madison had wandered in a few minutes later, looked at the paper, and said, "Cool. I think Mrs. Fairchild mentioned me in the announcements, too." I had folded the certificate into quarters and slid it under my mattress. 2 weeks later, it disappeared. That same year, my MIT acceptance came. Full ride. But Madison cried at the dinner table, saying she couldn't imagine graduating without me there. Valerie looked at me and said, "She needs you. College will always be there." It wasn't the words. It was how easily they were handed to her. How often the spotlight bent toward Madison like gravity had favorites. I reached into the drawer again and pulled out a folder marked Storm 2022. Inside was the contractor receipt, full payment for the roof, my signature at the bottom. Valerie never even asked who arranged the repair. She just thanked Madison for keeping things organized. Enough. I picked up my phone and opened my messages. Heather's name was still near the top. We hadn't spoken in months, not since she started freelancing full-time. But I knew she'd answer. Me. How fast can you get a lease termination? The typing bubbles appeared instantly. A beat later, her reply lit up my screen. Heather. Faster than Madison can fake cry. I smiled, small, sharp, and real. Heather hadn't forgotten what Madison did to her in college. The party. The rumor. The 3-week spiral that nearly cost Heather her scholarship. They'd smiled through the rest of that semester, but forgiveness was a myth everyone told themselves they believed in. I set the phone aside and turned to my laptop. It hummed to life with a familiar fan whir, the screen glow spreading across the bed like a spotlight. I scanned every document I had, every bill, every invoice, every lease term with my name on it. Each scan clicked into place like a puzzle piece I'd been assembling without knowing what the final image would be. When I was done, I opened Google Drive and created a new folder. Contingency. I uploaded everything. Then encrypted the drive. Backed up the files to a separate hard drive. Changed my passwords. Logged out of all shared devices. By the time the rain began to taper off, I had finished locking down every detail of the life they thought they could control. The silence in the house wasn't new, but today it felt earned, like a blade freshly sharpened. They thought I had nothing but silence. But silence was my weapon. I was building my escape, brick by document. Some truths don't need volume, they just need a table. And someone to place them there without flinching. The sunlight spilled across the living room floor, filtered through the polyester curtains Madison picked out last fall. They were yellow. Too yellow. Like someone tried to bottle cheerfulness and spilled it all over the windows. I sat at the edge of the couch, back straight, hands folded, waiting for my cue. Across from me, Gloria nested in the armchair like it was a throne. Pearl earrings, mauve lipstick, and a floral cardigan that matched her teacup. Everything about her whispered respectable busybody. She was the kind of neighbor who knew who skipped church, who changed their curtains, and exactly how many wine bottles were in your recycling bin. Madison, naturally, was performing. "Oh, we've just been so busy keeping the house together," she chirped, pouring tea like she ran a B&B. Between Mom's doctor visits and the yard work, it's a full-time job, right? Valerie nodded faintly from the corner, hands folded in her lap, pretending to listen while watching for Gloria's approval. Her smile was tight, practiced. Gloria sipped. Well, it certainly looks neat as a pin. You've always been such a help, Madison. Oh, she's amazing, Valerie added quickly. Madison beamed, then looked at me. And Elena? Well, she freelances, mostly just types and drinks coffee, right? She laughed. It was a light laugh, a harmless one, designed to be unthreatening, even charming. But it landed sharp. Gloria turned to me, head tilting just slightly. What do you do, dear? Before I could answer, Madison was already talking again. She does stuff online. It's hard to explain, really. I stood up. Oh, leaving so soon? Gloria blinked, surprised. No, I said simply, and disappeared down the hall. My steps were measured. Calm. The kind of calm that Madison mistook for passivity. Her first and oldest mistake. I opened the drawer in my room, pulled out the thick manila envelope I'd prepped that morning, and ran a finger over the sealed edge. When I returned, the conversation had shifted to window boxes. I walked past Madison, who paused mid-sentence, and placed the envelope on the coffee table directly in front of Gloria. The thump it made was small, satisfying. What's this? Gloria asked. Receipts, I said. Rent, internet, appliance repairs, all under my name. Since 2020. Silence settled over the room like dust. Gloria looked at me. Really looked for the first time since arriving. Then she opened the envelope. I returned to my seat and folded my hands again. Madison stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Gloria flipped through the documents. Pages and pages of itemized payments, check copies, service invoices. Neat, chronological, indisputable. The kind of proof that didn't shout but still rang louder than words. After a long pause, Gloria said, So, this house wouldn't run without you, huh? I met her eyes and smiled. Not wide, not smug. Just enough. Not unless you enjoy candlelight and cold showers. I didn't slam doors. I didn't scream. I just scheduled service cancellations. One click at a time. The living room was quieter that week. Not peaceful, just empty. Like the walls themselves were holding their breath. Rain drizzled against the windows, tracing crooked lines as if nature had forgotten how to weep properly. I sat cross-legged on my bed with my laptop glowing before me, every tab a quiet goodbye. The first click, internet, scheduled to end Friday at noon. Second, gas. Third, electricity. Each form I filled out asked the same thing. Reason for cancellation? I typed, no longer responsible for this address. No fanfare, no warning. Just digital threads unraveling, one confirmation email at a time. It was almost meditative. A text from Heather pinged in. Utilities canceled? Lease ready. You want me to mail or PDF? PDF. Also rename folder. Goodbye 2024. She responded with a thumbs up emoji, followed by, They're going to lose it. Please film the meltdown. I didn't reply. Downstairs, I could hear the rhythm of the house trying to pretend nothing was happening. Valerie moving plates with extra care. Madison laughing too loudly at her own joke. The same old script. By Wednesday, I'd stopped the grocery auto payments too. The fridge, once full of overpriced oat milk and Madison's kale, began to look like a breakup. Leftover condiments and wilted spinach. The cold hum of the appliance was the only thing steady. Thursday afternoon, Valerie knocked gently on my door. Elena? I minimized the spreadsheet and opened the door halfway. I got a weird letter from the electric company. Says something about disconnection. I looked at her for a long second before saying, Might be time for you to call the utility companies. She blinked, lips parting, like the line hadn't registered. Oh, right, I'll look into it. Her voice trailed off as she turned away. I closed the door, locked it, and returned to my laptop. The flash drive sat beside me. Matte black, labeled in neat silver Sharpie. Goodbye. 2024. I copied the final version of the contingency folder, encrypted it, ejected the drive safely, and tucked it into the pocket of my coat hanging by the door. Friday came faster than expected. Dinner was takeout again. Thai this time. Cold spring rolls and undercooked rice noodles. Madison was complaining about the soggy texture, swiping through her phone while Valerie opened fortune cookies. So annoying, Madison muttered, poking her pad thai. The Wi-Fi keeps cutting out. I kept chewing. It's like every 5 seconds. I'm trying to upload something. Can you check the router? I didn't move. Elena? She snapped, sharper now. Seriously? I looked up just as the kitchen lights flickered. Once. Twice. And then died. The ceiling fan whined to a halt. The microwave let out a strangled beep. Silence fell like a dropped curtain. Valerie gasped. What on earth? The stove's out. Madison stood, flipping switches. Why is nothing working? I finished chewing, placed my chopsticks neatly across the empty takeout box, and stood. I believe that's your job now. They told a story. I showed the receipts. The internet decided which was more believable. Saturday morning started with a filtered photo. Madison had arranged the kitchen just so. A soft candle glow on the counter, 2 steaming mugs staged next to a closed laptop, and a Bible angled like it had been gently set down after heartfelt prayer. She posted it with a caption so saccharine it gave me a toothache just reading it. Some people forget who held them at 3 a.m., but we forgive anyway. Family first. I stared at the screen for a moment, blinking once. Twice. Then the notifications began. Valerie was the first to comment. Stay strong, baby. Then came Madison's friends, the brunch crowd, the weekend warriors who posted their workouts and faux deep quotes. Comments flowed in. You're so resilient. Can't believe some people treat their own family like that. You're better off, sis. I scrolled once more, then locked my phone and went to make tea. Heather called within the hour. She posted? She did. Is it time? Yes. Heather chuckled. Then let's give the world something quieter. By noon, a simple link appeared on my profile. No caption, no emojis. Just this. Rentutilisreceipts.com. It redirected to a clean, minimalist site. At the top, a scanned folder titled Proof. Inside, PDFs of every bill I'd covered since 2020. Lease documents with my signature. A voice clip of Madison from 6 months ago. Can you just cover the power bill again? I'll Venmo you next week, swear. She never did. Screenshots followed. My payment to the roofing company after the storm. Messages ignored. Silent acknowledgements. The comment section started quietly. Wait, is this real? She paid for the roof? So, she was the one keeping the lights on? By evening, the tide turned. Madison's original post, once filled with sympathy, now had replies underneath each heart emoji. Sis, this not the flex you think it is. She showed the receipts. Literally. Apologized publicly like you shamed her publicly. Valerie unliked the post, then deleted her comment. Madison turned off replies. I didn't write a single word in my defense. I didn't need to. At 7:42 p.m., Heather texted, Your side doesn't need noise. It needs clarity. You just delivered it. I didn't ask them to stop me. I just made sure they couldn't follow. The sunlight hit different in the new place. It wasn't brighter, just honest. No curtains trying to soften it. No dusty blinds half closed for the sake of appearances. It spilled in through the kitchen window, bouncing off the stainless steel sink and catching the edges of the tiny herb planters lined up on the sill. Rosemary. Basil. Something unnamed, gifted by a neighbor who insisted it smelled like forgiveness. I set my mug down and clicked send on the final email to the old landlord. Subject: lease termination. Effective immediately. Attached was the scanned copy of the notarized notice Heather had finalized last night. No drama, no loopholes, just closure. My phone buzzed. A calendar reminder, community center, 10 a.m., digital literacy, room 2B. I grabbed my tote and stepped out into the cold air that no longer bit, just brushed past. The classroom smelled faintly of printer ink and old carpet. Folding chairs scraped as late arrivals shuffled in. A laminated poster on the wall read, "Tech belongs to everyone." An older woman, Carmen, fumbled with her tablet, brow furrowed in concentration. I knelt beside her. "Want to try again?" I asked. She looked nervous. "He probably won't pick up." I showed her where to tap. "He might." The screen rang once, twice. Then a man's face appeared. Older than I expected, tearful almost instantly. "Hi, Ma." Carmen gasped. Her hand hovered, then landed gently on the screen. "He waved at me," she whispered. "He really waved at me." I just nodded. I know what it means to be acknowledged after silence. Later that night, after dishes and mint tea and a playlist of jazz I never used to be allowed to play loudly, I opened my inbox. One new message, no sender name, just the subject line. "Is this the daughter you were ashamed of?" No attachments, no threats, just that sentence. I stared at it for a while, then dragged it into a folder on my desktop labeled Affirmation, right beside Proof, Goodbye 2024, and Lease Full.pdf. No reply needed. Outside, the wind had settled. No banging shutters, no flickering lights. Just the low hum of a building that didn't owe me anything, and somehow still felt more like home. Before bed, I wrote a note in my journal. I didn't know if I'd use it anywhere, but I wanted to see it in my own handwriting. Some exits aren't escapes. They're arrivals. I slept without headphones for the first time in years. The kettle hissed gently. I didn't rush to turn it off. I had time now. Time I used to spend anticipating someone else's moods, dodging comments wrapped in sugar, or fixing the things no one else noticed were broken. These days, I noticed everything. But it wasn't a burden. It was choice. It was mine. Sunday morning, no alarms, no cold stares across the breakfast table, just the soft thump of neighbors' footsteps overhead, a dog barking 2 buildings away, and a floor that creaked in friendly places. I poured the water slowly over the tea leaves. Jasmine, something I used to sneak into my room back then, sipping quietly like it was contraband. Now it bloomed openly on my windowsill, next to the rosemary that had grown wild, untamed. The community center didn't open today. Sundays were mine. I spent them walking sometimes or rearranging my books, even though I always kept them in the same order. Alphabetical, not by title, but author. I liked knowing someone's whole voice could sit on a shelf and never have to explain itself. The knock came at 10:14 a.m. I froze. Not in fear, just in recognition of a feeling I hadn't had in months. Uncertainty. My body no longer braced for yelling, for guilt masquerading as concern. Still, the knock didn't feel threatening. Just unfamiliar. I opened the door. Gloria stood there, hair curled, lipstick precise, the way she always looked on Sundays, like a woman who had stories to tell and knew when to keep them. She held a small plant pot. Lavender, wrapped in brown paper, tied with string. "I didn't come to pry," she said. "I didn't think you did." We stood a second longer before I stepped aside. She looked around the apartment. Modest, clean, quiet. "It smells like real life in here," she murmured. "And herbs," I smiled. "That's forgiveness, apparently." She handed me the pot. "That one's peace. I thought it might suit the windowsill." I took it carefully, cradling it like something more fragile than it was. We talked over tea. She didn't mention Madison. I didn't mention Valerie. But somewhere between her stories of church ladies who cheated at bingo and the new yoga instructor who talked like a phone ad, we found rhythm. Something human. Something outside survival. Before she left, she paused at the door. "People still talk, you know." she said. But now they whisper your name with respect. I didn't do it for that, I said. I know. That's why it matters. After she left, I placed the lavender next to the jasmine. They leaned toward each other, not quite touching, but close enough that the sunlight could catch them both. That night, I opened my laptop. Not for proof or planning or escape routes. Just to write. Not for anyone. Not to explain. Just to tell a story. It started with a dinner table. And a fork suspended midair. The house that once silenced her voice now echoed with absence. And in that void, the truth finally spoke louder than the lies. She didn't burn bridges. She simply removed the path they used to walk over her. Justice didn't come with applause or revenge. It arrived in the form of clarity. One document, one boundary, one quiet departure at a time. Like the final note of a song long suppressed, truth may arrive late, but it always resonates. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is leave, and make sure they feel your absence more than your presence ever hurt. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment your thoughts below. Type 1 if you've ever felt the same.